48-year conversation continued.
Yes, sir.
With us tonight, yeah. With us is Gregg Mchatton, Billy Mckinney, Bobby Schaeffer, and myself, John Gregg. Basically, we're here to discuss Gregg Mchatton and his relationship in our lives and his contributions to the game of golf, which are pretty immense. So I'd like to kind of start first. Gregg, let's talk a little bit about you. You've won numerous awards every year, top teacher in California, instructor of the year, Southern California, and that sort of thing. That story starts in Whittier, California. Is that about right? And
yeah, that's where I lived when I started playing.
And Candlewood,
8 years old.
Was it Candlewood your first golf?
Yeah. Dad was a member, and we went out to Candlewood, and I just went out, and he was playing. I was looking for frogs,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Did you find any?
Of course, there's lots of frogs. That's great.
Yeah, off that.
A lot of critters.
Yeah. So you get pretty good pretty quickly. You take a trip in about 1963 back to the United States Junior Amateur, and you win the tournament. Where was that at, Gregg?
It was at Florence, South Carolina. That's where Bobby almost qualified for the Open.
Well, and a few years later, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about that experience. You'd qualified before, is that correct? And
right, I qualified when I was 13.
Yeah.
And I went home and
as everybody does, I'm sure.
Right. In fact, I was a low qualifier.
Yeah.
So I went home, and Dad says, "Well, you can't win. There's no sense in you going."
That's perfect. Wow. Okay.
So I didn't go. But... And then, ironically, the week of the tournament, it was the only time in my whole life I was in bed for 5 days or something because of strep throat.
Yeah. Okay. But then, 13-year-olds old. What happens at 14? Did you try to qualify again?
Sure, I tried to qualify at 14 and 15. One of those days, I played at the California Country Club, and the snack bar was way down away from the first tee, and I went down to get a Coke, and I missed my first tee by like half a minute, and it cost me 2 strokes. So I started +2, So I didn't make it that year.
Yeah.
Then I didn't make it in 15. I figured I was kind of done, but then I qualified.
Yeah, you were washed up at 15.
Yeah, I washed up. Yeah.
That's what Earl Woods told his kid too. Hey, you're not good enough, kid. Stay in bed.
Yeah. And so at 16 now you qualify and you go back to Florence, South Carolina, and you win that tournament. Who did you beat in the finals? You mentioned
Richard Bland.
Richard Bland. Okay.
Richard Bland. I was 6 up at the turn.
Ah. You held on?
Yeah, I did. I held on, and I only won 4 and 3. But on 10, I've got it 10 feet, and he's got it over the green. He's got absolutely no shot.
Yeah.
So I'm going 7 up, and he holds it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the wild ride. So So what year do you enter USC to play college golf? Around 66, is that correct?
66. Yeah, 66.
Okay, and now those are some interesting years. You had you were recruited by Houston. I remember you mentioned to me pretty heavily.
Right. Dave Williams called every day. And when he wasn't talking to me, he was talking to Mom or Dad.
Yeah.
He would just tuck their ear off.
And so how did it end up at SC? What happened?
Well, I was going to go to Arizona State because I really liked, I think his name is Mr. Mann. I think he was a coach.
Yeah.
And I just thought he was the best of everybody I talked to.
Yeah.
And then my dad was talking to Stan, and Stan offered him a full scholarship. And Dad says, "Well, you're going to SC."
Well, there you go.
In those days, I was the first guy since Tommy Jacobs to get a full scholarship.
Wow. Well, that's.
Hey, Hat, what do you like about Mann, real quick, as a coach back as a kid?
Oh gosh, he was just, he was worried about me. He was concerned about me and wanted me to do well, and wanted to know what he could do to help me.
Yeah. So you get to see that. So tell me a little bit about that team there. As the years went on, that team became pretty strong, didn't it? Did it not?
Right. I mean, we had Kim Richardson.
Yep.
And he was first team All-American. Right. He won the Pac
10 3 years in a row.
Pac 10. I came in second to him.
Yeah.
At LA North. That's remember Max Homa shot '61 at LA North when he won the pack.
Right. Yes, he did.
Pack 10 or 8 or 12 when it was him.
Yep.
And then we had our last college year, my senior year, we had Gary Sanders. We had Vic Lostelot. You remember that name, Vic Lostelot?
I do. I know Tim lost a lot.
Yeah, Tim's dad.
There you go. So
Yep.
so Vic would have to make this beautiful swing and hit it dead right. Step up next swing and hit it. Perfect looking swing, hit it dead right. But Sanders thought he looked too good that he shouldn't be playing. So he should be playing. He played. And he kept playing him. And he really never broke an egg for us. But then, like, he won his 3rd tour event.
Oh.
What was it, a dogleg right golf course?
And he won, I think he won at Heritage.
Wow. Wow, that's a small world.
But
You guys have quite a
our last tournament, our last year that I played there, we had Gary Sanders and myself and Billy Seymour and Bruce Osborne, and we won 22 dual matches. They played dual matches in those days, 22 out of 22.
Yeah.
We won 6 out of 6 tournaments that we played in prior to the NC2A, and we had individual winners at each one of those tournaments. I won 2, Gary won 2, and we had 2 other guys win 1.
Wow.
And we had a guy named Dennis Noren. And when we got to Colorado Springs, where the tournament was, the national, it was blowing 50, 60 miles an hour, and it didn't affect it in the air as much as you'd expected to, but it would blow it off the green. So you'd hit it and run up and try and mark it before it blew up.
Was that the year Bobby Clark won the individual title?
Bobby Clark shooting 299.
Okay.
Ooh.
And you played pretty well, right, considering the
I
conditions?
shot 311, and I was one of the few guys that broke 80 every day.
Wow, that's amazing. Wind can do that to you. Okay, so we leave USC with honors, or were you an All-American there? I would assume on a few occasions.
I was honorable mention 3 years.
Okay. Well, we're mentioning again, so you can count at 4. And so then, okay, you turn professional. You head up to Canada. You go to qualifying school. What happens after that?
Right. So it's Canada, did well in Canada, played in 4 provincial opens, did pretty well.
Yeah.
Was doing well in the 8th state open at Pasatiempo and didn't finish it. But then we went to that year. We went to Silverado. But the first qualifying, I made it on the number. I played the last 9 holes with 9 pars.
Wow.
And made it right on the number. Then we went up to Silverado, and I missed it by 3 up there.
Yeah, you start off with a tough round there. I remember you saying.
Right. One of my favorite holes of all time. I can't forget.
Yeah.
I had a quad in my first round. I can remember every shot. This is clear as day.
I was doing some research recently, and it's funny how golf pros will often get together and they don't talk about their tour wins, even if they've won U.S. Opens. They talk about their tour school stories.
Right.
There's something about, I guess it's like taking the bar or something, right?
Right.
Okay, so you're working. So at some point you bump in and you end up at Santa Anita working for Bruce, right? Bruce.
Right. There you go.
Hey, Johnny, I want to back up just one quick step.
Yeah.
Because I know Gary Sanders meant so much to you, and what a great player. Tell us about your relationship with Gary, since we're all friends here. That's the big part.
Oh gosh, we started. We were good friends before we went to SC.
Yeah.
And played junior golf together. He won the national junior 2 years, I think, after I did, or 3 years. So he won when he was 17, I think. And then he was. I drove up to Silverado with him, and he qualified and I didn't, which was a tough ride home. But and then he had a pretty good year. He played pretty well on tour, and he looked like he was going to do well. And he was playing at the Western Open at Butler National, and he had a lump taken out from underneath his arm when he was back home, and he went out. And he shot 69 in the first round. He was right in good shape, very good shape, top 4 or 3. And then the second round, he feels the lump has come back. Then he shoots 80, misses a cut, comes home. And we're going to go out to dinner with him that night. And he was painting his house. And he faints or passes out painting his wall, falls off the ladder. And he was going to go into the hospital like a day or two later. And he went in then, and when they opened him up, he was just inundated with cancer.
Wow.
So sorry, Hat.
Yeah.
I know, I think about him a lot. I remember one day he and I were practicing. We were such good competitors for each other. And this one day I just nailed him. He just couldn't keep up with me. And I hit every shot just like I wanted. We were practicing at Los Coyotes. I could call my shot. I knew every feel I had. And then I went home and went to sleep. And I woke up the next day and it was gone. Completely gone.
Why do you go to sleep?
I know, right? That's what I tell everybody. Well, if you're playing well, whatever you do, don't go to sleep.
Yeah. Told me that many times, Hat.
There you go.
Well, you know, you're in Santa Anita. You go to a Q school or two. You get really close. Did you spend 1 year playing in Europe? I don't know why I remember that. Did you?
Yeah. I went to Europe in '74.
Yeah.
Went to the that's the year '74 where there was Lytham St. Anne's,
Mm-hmm.
and I missed by a shot or two.
Okay.
We played this golfing park, and it was wide open. There wasn't a tree on it, and it was across the street from the ocean, but it was blowing like crazy. And I was hitting these low little darts, and I was playing with these locals, and they were just throwing it up in the air and just watch it go backwards. I didn't understand what they were doing, but they didn't qualify either, of course. But Alan Tapey qualified.
Yeah, there's one.
Finished 11th.
Wow.
Is that the year Gary Player won?
He wasn't far behind you at SC, correct?
Oh, a couple of years. Bobby,
Yeah.
what?
Yes, Gary Player's victory.
Oh,
74?
maybe.
I believe
I'm
so.
not sure. I don't remember.
Pat, what was the name of the course where you were qualifying?
Oh, Blackpool GZ, I think. Blackpool Golf Course.
Yeah.
Just this stuff. Golfing park.
So at this point now, you come back after that experience over there in Europe. You start to teach a little bit more, right? And that's
Oh yeah, I love that.
yeah, and that's where I think right about '74. You know, I probably had seen you before around Santa Anita because I started hanging out there a little before '72 and during the summers and would come up with my dad occasionally. But I would say in the late '70s, I probably took a lesson from you or two.
Right.
And I'm going to college at that point. And Bobby, when's your first lesson with Hat? What year would that have been?
1978. I was on the driving range. Hat was kind enough to donate his time to junior golfers. And I was one of maybe 14, 15 kids out there. And I never forget the day I could tell the Hat where I was sitting to within a 2 square yard radius. And when Hat walked down the range, that changed my life.
Yep.
Oh man.
Amen.
For the better, I hope.
Well, it's a mixed bag.
Is that up for debate?
The bad stuff's not because of you, but it's been mostly great.
And Billy, how about you? First lesson from Gregg. I mean, was it a few years or right about that time or a little later?
Mine was a little later. I was in at UC Santa Barbara in 1984 first. I graduated then in high school. And I kept hearing about Hat, and I kept hearing about Bobby Schaeffer. And, of course, Bobby Clampett was tearing up the amateur or the pro world by then.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Yeah.
I was taking lessons here and there from our good friend Jake Harder.
Right.
And wonderful man. And he eventually told me, I can't take you any further. You got to go see the Hat.
Well, I love Jake. Jake's the best.
It was probably because of all the free lessons. I was never paying him. I couldn't afford. So he just sent me away.
He said it.
But Jake
we
was always
could
telling me
spend
about.
an hour and a half telling Jake stories, and it'd be
Oh my gosh,
they're
the best. He's the heart of golf, man. He's the best heart.
Yeah, he's like a Seamus McDuff or a Chivas Irons to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He calls me once a week almost.
Still, awesome.
How you doing, Hat? I got a question for you.
He's such an amazing man. So it was about 1979. You read an article.
One more Jake story.
Oh, please.
So Jake came in one day at Santa Anita. He said, "Gregg, I've got the secret, but I can't tell you. I have to test it a couple more times. Maybe I can tell you in a day or two." So a day or two later, he comes in and he says, okay, I think I got the secret. I can tell you. He says, you got to hit it square.
That's like Valerie Hogan telling Ben to hit it closer.
Yeah, hit it closer. You having trouble with your putting?
Who needs TrackMan with that advice?
So 1979, is that when you read the article in
All right, Golf World.
Golf World, 79, you read an article about this book called The Golfing Machine.
Three-page article with, I think, three-page article with Ben and Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
And Bobby Clampett. And I thought, wow, that you know, because as we talked about recently, the way I decided what I was going to teach was I would get Golf Magazine and Golf Digest, and that's what I taught that next month. So the next magazine came. So then the Golf Machine gave me a little more organization.
You think? That's the key, right? It's the organization is sort of the premise behind.
Well, then I went up to Ben.
Yeah, and you know, I want to bring up something here that's always fascinated me about you is, and we've discussed this a little bit, is your computer early adapter, shall we say, of the computer world. When did that start for you? When was it starting then, or earlier?
I got an Apple IIc, and that came out in 1984.
84.
So I had an Apple IIc before that, so I probably got it in 80.
Okay, so golfing machine and computers, and off you go. So tell me about your relationship with Ben Doyle. How you went up to see Ben, and how did that start out?
I was just fascinated. Although the first shot he hit his little thump bump shot, and he had this shot. It was completely full roll. He was at level of the ground, past the ball, and the club face is at the ground. I'm going, oh my goodness, I don't know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
Completely full roll hinge.
Mm-hmm.
And but then I just listened to him and tried to do what he said, and I just thought, you know, he's not watching the ball. I don't care what the ball does. I'm just playing for the camera. So I just kept trying to do what he said.
Yep.
And I remember one time I was up there and he said, Greg, I want to put you in my book of good players. So I want you to hit a shot. And I'm going to take a picture of it and I'll just put it in there. Well, that's not good enough, Greg. Okay. Well, Greg, that's not going to do it. So I never got in the book.
I thought you were good enough. That counts for something. Oh my God, we can all tell Ben Doyle stories.
Graph check book, you know, we had 8 frames.
Yeah.
6 frames.
Sure.
Didn't have enough frames past the test, you know.
I stayed with Ben a few times in my life up there those years taking lessons, and Bobby Schaeffer, of course, had his graph check right on Ben's fridge. And he told me, he goes, Bobby Schaeffer is the model, not Bobby Clampett. That's what he said.
Oh, there you go.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Greg, let me ask you, how did Ben affect your teaching with the golfing machine and as a person? Did you know, because he's an interesting person. Besides the golfing machine, I think there's a lot more to Ben than just the golfing machine.
Right.
Did that have any effect on you as an instructor?
So one of the things I did, I brought him down. I was an education chairman, so I brought him down a couple times.
Yes.
To our section.
Yep.
And I thought that was, I mean, that helped our relationship a lot. And I think he liked to spend time with me, and he enjoyed our time together. Although I will say, so we were in 1980. When was it? Maybe 88, right? I had just come back from. In 86, I went to Australia. We went with Bobby and Billy later. But in 86, I went to Australia and I gave a golf machine school.
Yeah.
And over there, I ran into Mike Hebron's book. And so when I was at the education chairman for the section, I thought, well, I got to figure out how to get Michael back here to Southern California, and he's going to be our keynote speaker for our first annual summit, before his summit. And so he came out, and Jimmy gave a presentation, and Michael gave a presentation, and I gave a presentation. And after the presentation, he said, Greg, he says, would you like to, present the golf machine for for the national summit? I said, oh, no. You should invite Ben. Well, he says, I don't know, Ben. I know you. I like what you just said. I would appreciate it if you do it. I said, well, okay. So then he was, at that time, Tommy Tomasello had a 2-hour, he already had been given 2 hours to do the golf machine. So Michael called him and said, okay, here's the deal. We're going to give you 2 hours. We're going to add Gregg, and we're going to do 3 hours. Would you be willing to do that? And Tommy says, well, sure, that'd be great. So then that Masters, that April, Pat Riley was at the Masters, and he told Ben, he said, I can't wait to hear you at the summit. He said, what are you talking about? Well, he said, I can't wait because I understand you're going to speak at the first PGA teaching summit. No, I don't know anything about it. So then I told Michael that I had heard this, and so Michael says, well, I'll call him. So he calls him and he says, he said, I'll just let him down nicely. He'll do it next time. So by the time he got through talking to him, he calls Tommy. He says, okay, here's the deal. Would it be okay if we give you 2 hours and Gregg and Ben will be there and we'll figure out the time? And Tommy said, no, I don't want to do it with Ben. So what we had 2 hours and between Ben and I thought what I should do is introduce Homer, introduce the book, and then introduce Ben. So I took up like 30 minutes to do this. And so at the end of the talk, Michael was cutting it right on the dime, exactly on the instant. He's got to get Ben off the stage, and Ben is not through yet. I'm not done. No, it's not done yet. Well, Ben, we have to stop. We have to stay on schedule. So he comes off the stage, and 3 years later, as nice as he could say it, he said, Gregg. He says, you talk too much.
You took too long to introduce me.
All the 30 minutes of the 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
You killed him. But, he had his ways, but you've migrated in your own way of teaching, and the golf machine has certainly been a huge foundation. Can you kind of explain that to me? Or we all kind of understand it here, and we're going to get to your relationship with these two gentlemen, because, by the way, for those of you who might tune in and listen to this, these are probably the most preeminent people in the world of golfing machine, Homer Kelly, and understanding the book and actually applying it both as players or as instructors and furthering their educations and becoming, both of you, Billy and yourself, some of the best instructors, or the best instructors on this continent, I know for sure. So how does that foundation, where does that go for you as the foundation of your instruction?
Well, so I went up to see Ben in 79 and spent until 82 with him, and I continued after that. But in 82, Ben says, well, you should go see Mr. Kelly. So you know how pushy I am. I would call Mr. Kelly and say, you've got to do a school. You got to do another school. And so finally he did a school. And so I think we were the last class. In the first class he did, there was 9 guys there. And he says, okay. He says, you read page 1. And so they spent like 9 days and they read the book. That's what they did. Each person just read and they just went through the book. And then, so the first 3 classes, he's going, he says, I don't get it. All these guys are calling and asking me questions that I think they should know. And so when we took the class, and Mike Holder was there, we did 5 days, not 9, and we spent 3.5 days in chapter 2. Because he said that's where all the answers are.
Okay. So it profoundly affects your instruction. It becomes pardon?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Absolutely, right. I mean, there's a quote here, if I could find it, I thought it was rather interesting. It was something about, let's see, demanding that golf instruction be kept simple does not make it simple, or other than incomplete, and if you try to make it simple, it only makes it incomplete and ineffective. I mean, I think it's not simple, but that's sort of some people's look at the golf machine. It over wows them, I think. But when I've taken lessons from you, I've never had that experience. So how have you done that?
Homer would always say, start at the first weak link.
Mm-hmm.
And he would also say, I don't care what you do as long as you know what you do.
Right.
His book, presented pretty much what he was thinking. So, I'm going to give you a lot of ways to do it.
Right.
Well, you figure it out. And then as long as you know what you do, it should be good.
So
but my favorite is the third day of the class. He says, I don't like swinging. I go, what do you mean you don't like swinging? I came up here to learn how to swing.
Swinging versus hitting, correct?
Yeah. So he says, I like to go out with 7 balls and come back with 2. He said, but I was in control of the ship. He said, that swinging, that's too easy. He said, that's boring. I said, well, that's the one I want to learn, is the boring one. I want to bore people. I want to bore me. Let's do that.
Let's do that. Go ahead.
Is it fair to say that when we watch long drivers, they're aggressive 4-barrel swingers almost to the person?
All right.
Not hitters, really, right? They're not.
No. Look at Kyle. Golly.
Berkshire. That's pivot driven, quick start down.
He's
That's
working
swinging.
hard. He couldn't stand the ground if he tried, right? I mean, he's pulling that left foot off the ground. It's pulling back in. His hips are just ripping through there.
So where do you guys do your first golf school together? Back in Bobby's professional days, I guess. Where was that?
Let me interject here. There's a couple of things. I was at UC Santa Barbara with Billy, and had invited me to a PGA seminar to Tehachapi Hat in the mid-'80s. There's there, and we also had a few famous golf pros come through that.
One of my favorites when we were at Valencia Country Club, and you were there filming.
He got me in the door as a filmer, and
right.
I'm usually very shy, but I asked a few questions that day.
Yes, you did. Yeah, you got chastised.
Yes, I did.
You gosh darn golf machine guys are all alike.
I was there so excited to learn about Ben Hogan and the secrets of the game, and I couldn't wait for some nuggets, and I walked away going, what a waste of my time.
I'm afraid I almost agree with you.
I'll leave it at that. But and then we started doing stuff together out of college. I remember a big one at PGA West. I made the finals of tour school in 1990, and back then we had a cut. I made the cut, and Hat started came out and tuned me up, and with a little hindsight, may have gotten through, but isn't that golf for all of us? But we had a seminar that week. I remember very well. The next day after I missed, and after the 6th round, which you're depressed, but I was very excited to be with the Hat and back you up to give back to the game. That was a very special few days.
Oh, great.
That seminar was at PGA West?
PGA West, yes. Hat had about 15 people come in. He had his cameraman. We were, Billy and I and you, Grundy, we're just looking for answers in golf. And
Right.
The go-to guy in Southern California, without doubt, was Gregg Mchatton, and Northern California's Ben Doyle, to at least get some science-based answers and at least get a foundation of knowledge. And that's what I got in spades, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, for sure. So Gregg, at this point, you're outside of Ben and Homer in the early 90s. You're probably the go-to guy for golfing machine instruction. And let's just talk about guys. I mean, a lot of people, they get, the golf machine's too much, but look at the great players. It's a Steve Elkington. All the Oklahoma State teams out of the 80s had influenced by.
Yeah, so Mike Holder did a great job, right?
Right. Mike Holder did a great job. But what other? I mean, there's all sorts of players out there that come to mind that were using the golf. Bobby Clampett.
Jody Mudd.
Jody Mudd, exactly right.
Mac O'Grady, famous. Grant Wade.
Bob Tway.
By the way, Gary Player, Mo Norman,
Bernhard Longer, Tom Kite, John.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think it's pervasive, really. And and understandable if you've read the book that, you know, based on science, geometry and physics kind of dominate a round ball on a flat club face on an inclined plane and being a human being. And that's what Ben tried to catalog, right? And so, you know, you continue on this path, and I'm just going to quick forward how pervasive this knowledge and how it's affected. Billy Mckinney and I are sitting at the 2000, what Open was it, Billy? What year was it? 2010. 10. And we're in the dining area for the players at Olympic Club, sitting talking with Sean Foley.
That was 2012, Grundy.
2012, and all of a sudden it comes up that his first instruction was from you. And when his father was either I think he was a physicist, if I'm not mistaken, right, Billy, at Northridge?
He was a math teacher or a physics teacher or something.
Physics teacher. And he goes, hey, I think there's this guy that knows a lot about the golf swing. It's Gregg Mchatton. I'm going to take you to him for his first lessons. And, you know, that's the type of thing that the golfing machine, I think, over the years, quietly has done to a lot of different players. Would you agree, Billy, on that one? And
I couldn't say more. And especially nowadays, it's coming on stronger than ever, believe it or not, with social media. Look at Bryson DeChambeau's built his game around the foundation of the golf.
Him and Mike Shy is a follower of Ben. We talk about
absolutely.
That a lot.
You know, but there's, you know, I'm somewhat active on Instagram, another one of those things, and you watch, and there's thousands of people interested in it now, where it was a little bit more of a small culture back then, and now it's got a bigger culture.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And it's, you know, there's something about the truth that it's just, ultimately it's kind of hard to quiet down or to squelch entirely. Correct. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. Gregg, so you continue on with the golfing machine, but at some point you bump into a man in the early 90s named Dr. James Greenwald. And
right. And so, but one thing before that,
okay.
I think one of the things that maybe some of the golf machine teachers, I think, was a problem is they would just quote the book.
Right.
And, you know, when people read the book, they didn't understand it. When I was quoted to the book, they still didn't understand it. And so what I always try to do is tell them what the book meant. I'd use my words. So I had a student at Sepulveda, and then we went down in 91 and did a golfing machine school. And this guy came down and he said, good golly, I didn't know you talk like this.
Well, I was talking to
Dr. Greenwald came down, and he was just enamored with what we did. And that's the first time I'd ever met him. And so right after he left, it wasn't just a couple of months later, he went to a convention where Ariel Gideon has his software and his computer set up to assess gait that they would use in their orthopedic office. And Greeny says, he says, we could use this for golf. So he buys this and he gets his ROC, the Reno Orthopedic Clinic. There's 13 guys in the group, and they fund us they buy all the software and the hardware, and they get us into a biomechanics lab that's about half the size of the cafe at Vista. And they pay the rent for 2 years, and we have a full-time biomechanist for 2 years. And we were just a hole in the ground that ate money, and we were supposed to eventually do something to make some money, but we just did not do that. But
you're early outliers on that, right?
It was great, because so we took the data. Tony, the biomechanist, was so good. He was such an expert digitizer. He digitized Mr. Hogan's swing with Ariel's software. We only had a front view, but he did it from the front view. And when you sent that to Silicon Graphics, which was the leader in 3D in the industry in Hollywood at the time, and then ROC and Greeny bought a $20,000 computer. And can you imagine a $20,000 computer in 1990?
Sure, we can. Yeah.
And that was their mid-range computer. And with that, you got $5,000 worth of free programming. So what they did is they built us a three-dimensional model of Mr. Hogan, and on that SGI computer, you could take Mr. Hogan and look at him from underneath him. We could go up and look at the top. We could look from anywhere we wanted. It would just go anywhere. And so then that's where Blobman was born. I just took a top view, a side view, and a front view. And the top view is so fascinating, and we never get to see that.
Yes.
And the neat thing is now with Apple, we might be able to get Blobman in real time with the LiDAR camera and the new iOS.
Well, that's exciting. So when does Blobman come into? Was that the beginning, or was that the birth of Blobman ultimately?
Right. So about '93, I started working on them, and by 1999, I had a product.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't very good, but it was out. It took me 8 years to develop it, and so I've been developing that ever since. It's a lot different now and a lot more informative now. But it was different then, and some parts of that were better than what it is now, but it's still great.
So let me ask you this question. What is it that Blobman and the research with the golf machine, and then onto Blobman 3D imaging using Hogan, the thing that resonates most with you to help people help your students or help you instruct? What's the resonating force that?
Well, so I think what everybody would say is you can't copy Hogan. And in fact, there was one of the summits maybe the next year that I went, maybe 2000 or 1990, 88 and 2000. I went 1990. So it was Hogan this, Hogan that, Hogan this, Hogan that for the whole summit. And then Gary Wyron gets up last, and he said, "Hey, he was hit by a bus. He was double jointed. You can't use him as a model. He was a freak." and I was thinking, what I've always thought was, there's not somebody, everybody can learn something from him. Obviously, we're not going to completely model him.
Right.
But everybody can learn something that would be a big advantage to their game if they employed it, if they utilized it.
Right. I would agree with that.
And then Billy just gave me a quote the other day. I was always struggling with the idea that, Homer had hitting and swinging in the book. And he said he had Hogan on one side and Snead on the other. And he didn't want to conflict with anything that they said or what he saw. Not what they said, but what he saw them doing, not necessarily what they wrote or what they said. And that was his book. And I was thinking, well, that means one of those guys has to be a hitter. And I just thought they were always swingers. And then Billy said, Ben had once said, "We're shooting for Mr. Hogan. We'll settle for Mr. Snead, and none of the rest of it's coffee machine."
No, nothing else is really golf.
Well, nothing else is really golf.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if Bobby might have been there with me. We were up probably taking a lesson together, or I was with Joe O'Neill or something. And I'll never forget that. Shooting for Hogan, we'll settle for Snead. Everything else isn't golf. And I think he meant GOLF, golf with period.
Of course. With periods. Which is why I took it the way I took it.
I remember picking up Ben in Australia at 6:30 in the morning to go out and to do our seminars, and he's always so bushy-tailed and ready to go, and he'd always say the same thing in the morning. We're going to make him do it right. We're going to make him do it right. He's so doing it right. His version of right. Pretty amazing.
One of my greatest treats was going to Australia with Billy and Bobby in '86, or not '86. When we go,
like 90. It was 96, maybe.
96.
No. You went in 80, 90, whatever that was. I didn't go with you, and Billy and I took you over in 2005.
Yeah.
You went.
2005.
I went a couple times, but with Billy, you went 2005 with us, but you went years prior to that.
Oh, 86. I went 86 by myself.
You went 86. I remember that when Billy and I were at UC Santa Barbara. Then we took you over in 05, and it was a wonderful time. Steve Katib.
All right. He's out of golf.
Well,
Greg, where do you see as fellow golf professionals, as instructional professionals, what could we do better?
As teaching professionals?
Yes. As a group or as individuals, what do you think?
Never stop learning.
I agree. Yeah, that's a strong one. Billy, I mean, let me just talk about some parallels here. And as we've talked about this between you and Billy, another instructor of the year, Horton Smithwitter of Southern California.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly. I mean, this relationship with you has turned into Billy's, he's got a passion. And I think that kind of sums it up. Never stop. This guy's never stopped. I mean, I don't know. I get letters from him upside down and backwards when he's sat hanging around and doing pull-ups with his knees and stuff, and doing cowbells. And and reading the golf machine upside
Right,
down.
right.
Right. And I mean, never stop learning,
Cowbells. I love the
right?
cowbells.
And Bobby's the same way. I mean, I remember picking up Bobby at times and having to wait 45 minutes outside his grandmother's house because he wasn't done meditating yet. And then I'd have to go open the door for him because he wouldn't touch the handle. But he was always, and you know, he's gone through changes, but you know, they never stop learning. These guys are always, today, they're always stopping learning. I think that's greatly affected by you. And I wish a mantra for our fellow professionals. Let me ask you, this is a big one. And maybe you could chime in here, Billy. What do we do as a profession to help us get better? I have an idea on this, but I want to hear it from you, Billy and Greg. What does the PGA help us do better to become better teaching professionals and grow the game from an instructor's point of view? I think they do a lot of other things, and I'm not trying to rag on the PGA, but what could they do better in your perspective? And I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you have a suggestion?
I'll start. And I had the good fortune of being the chairman of the teaching committee for about 3 or 4 years, somewhat recently.
Greg was the first, by the way. Yeah, Greg was the first, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing, right? Isn't that cool? Okay, sorry to interrupt. I just want to interject that. Okay, so go ahead. You're head of that committee.
So, I'm heading that committee, and I wanted to give the people who would show up, our attendees, exposure to as much of the latest sports science and science from other cultures as well, including rocket science or, you know, some kind of exercise science or you name it. I tried to have a little vast array. So I think exposure and, you know, but mentorship, Bobby and I talk about this all the time, that mentoring is the main crux. And here, I mean, what an honor to be able to do this with Gregg, especially because he's been such an important mentor to us. But, you know, that for everyone needs to have good mentoring, or, you know, and it's so easy now to get the information and, you know, just turn on your phone and it's there. So I don't know, exposure.
One of the dangers of today is there's so much information, and can be so useful, and it can be so detrimental. Like so many people misuse TrackMan in such a way as it becomes high-tech steering. Right. But the information is unbelievably good.
Yeah, it was somebody just recently told me, he goes, I don't understand TrackMan. I'm with these young guys and they hit balls and they go, no. They said, wasn't that a great shot? And this person said to me, it was a great shot, but it did go out of bounds. You know, I mean, all the numbers looked right, but there was no zip code attached. You know, I had the right launch, I had the right spin, but I mean, what could we do as professionals? I mean, let me interject here. I think, and this is interesting because both you and Billy are very good at this. Billy's on social media. Greg, you have great access and computer skills. I think we need to teach our fellow professionals how to market themselves more effectively, and of course educate and be better instructors. Always, never stop learning there. But how do we do that? How do we help them, mentor them to be able to reach out and grow their business and show them how to grow their business and reach other people? Are we missing that boat, you guys, or not?
Sure. You're right. They just have to expose themselves. They have to get themselves just post something once a week in one of the boards, one of the threads.
I mean, there is.
Well,
go ahead.
Let me add to that, John. First of all, I don't think Gregg Mchatton has had to do too much marketing because his bona fides has always qualified him to have enough people.
That's exactly correct. I mean, there is always
one. You know what you're doing. But for guys like me, I had to go on social media and do creative, fun stuff. Right. Let me back up a step. This is chapter 2 of the golfing machine.
There you go.
You just mentioned TrackMan, and that's pretty much what TrackMan is right there.
Exactly.
It's sort of slowing impact way down and getting really close to it, and the D plane and all that stuff is the programming of the computer at impact.
I was
how brilliant, how far ahead of his time was the guy?
Oh yeah, I've always thought so. So it took him 28 years to write the book in the first place, edition 1. And in 13 more years, 41 years now, he wrote 6 more editions. What edition would he be in now if he's still with us? He'd be in the 25th edition.
My goodness.
What in the world would that look like?
Right, that'd be amazing.
All the sports science facilities, like Gregg was talking there at UNR. That was probably one of the first ones. Now that's a hot thing. I mean, I tell people all the time that it's the easiest time to be knowledgeable because it's so easy to find all the sports science now.
Right.
It's a press away on your thumbs.
Right.
But let me interject there, which is kind of fascinating. All of us started out obviously as I actually want to ask you more about that, Hat, your playing career, but maybe next time. But I find older I get, the more fascinating I find. What is the golden nuggets you don't let go of, your foundation that you polish every day like a martial artist, right? Chop wood and carry water the next day. And when do you pursue something that could add to your golf game without going down that bad rabbit hole?
Right.
That's the tricky part, being a competitive golfer. And like Josh Anderson, Billy's student, my dear friend, who's just one of the most talented kids on the planet. And some days you watch him play golf and you could swear he's on the Ryder Cup team. Yeah, he's in his parents' basement right now. And it's no knock on Josh. Right here, Josh can still make the tour. But when to stick with what's working and when to add that next layer without going down that rabbit hole, that's very tricky as a player.
Absolutely.
I think that was one of Mr. Hogan's secrets. He knew what to throw out, and he knew what to keep.
Oh, did he ever? And fail fast.
Yeah, fail fast and get rid of it.
Yeah.
So I used to always go to Hat all the time. My favorite comments from the Hat sometimes, I go to Hat, I'd be gone for a month or two, and I come see him, and I'm working on something that's stupid. But at the time, I was really into it, and it was horrible. And I demonstrate for the Hat. He says, Hat, I'm trying to do this, and whatever it is, he says, congratulations, you accomplished it. But it's basically crap. Congratulations on that.
Okay, so we're on there. Bobby, give me a moment. Is there any one particular moment that stands out for you in a lesson with Gregg?
Well, I'll quote Billy on that one. Every time Billy would leave the Hat, and I would too, I'd feel better about my golf game, which is huge. I'd feel like I'm a better player. And Billy left Ben Doyle. It's no knock on Ben, think I got a lot of work to do. But that sense of, I think Butch Harmon gives it to his player in spades, that sense of I've got it and I'm worthy and I own it, is a big part of being a golf professional, helping a young player try to make the tour, is feeling good about their golf game and confident. And that's based on science, but it's also based on Hat's style about how to massage that conversation, being a player himself, and that's a big value. Yeah.
Gregg, and we haven't talked much about your relationship with Les Johnson, and he's quite an instructor. And when did that start with you guys? When you were at Valencia, Big V or Little V?
Oh, when I went back to Little V, after I left and went down to Sepulveda and came back to Little V, he was there.
Yeah.
So we just became friends, and he already had it, like Bobby and Billy. All I got to do is just push and polish a little bit.
Yeah. So, Billy, any moments shall we call them moments of Greggness? Moments of Greggness.
Moments of Greggness. Thanks.
Moments of Greggness. Yeah, because Bobby's right. I can't count the times I spent with Gregg on the range or, talking to him on the phone, but mostly range time for me. But there is a sense of empowerment. And I think that's that is sort of an essence of your instruction. Of when you walk away, you feel empowered to, take your body, that golf club, and go out and create shots on a golf course to produce a golf score. And I think for me, part of that is the fact that you understand the essence of playing high quality golf. I think that helped. To be honest with you, I wasn't all that aware of it when I first started taking lessons from you. I just watched your golf swing and thought it was awesome, but I hadn't really put all the parts together with your tournament ability. But obviously, it lent itself to me and empowered me, and has made. Because the golfing machine, I went up and saw Ben, and like Bobby said, I walked away and going, man, wow. I'm a little confused. I think I know what I need to know, but I'm going to have to go back and work on it. And work I did, and I will not say it. I did get better, but I pretty much in my time with you would be instantly better. If we access that thing that you saw that we needed to get to, if I could access it, which I did most of the time, almost all the time, it made me better. And that's a powerful tool to walk away knowing I have flight control over my ball. I'm compressing it in a certain way. I hear a lot of people laughing now, Grundy compressing the golf ball, but actually did compress it from time to time. And that was fun. I mean, I'll tell you what, there's nothing that feeling of thumping that golf ball. And for me, it always came back to this. And I think Bobby was talking about it. For me, it was always an inward motion produces an outward force. And I can wake up in the middle of the night and that'll be ringing in my head. Knowing that, you know, this thing's got to bang out of me somehow. That's how the club's got to go, huh? I mean, that's for me. I don't know, but that's how it always resonated with me when I was with you. I was always getting in the way of that.
One of the interesting things to me was, as much as I talked about the pivot for years and years and years and years and years.
Yep.
Only in the last 4 or 5 years did I really appreciate how much it should do, how much Hogan did.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and that's what Ben always said, Gregg. You have to give it the business.
It's a business.
Yeah.
Grundy, I got my favorite hat lesson story. For me personally, that was a game changer. And my favorite line in the golf machine, as you all know, I've told you many times, is uneducated hands can nullify it all and never be suspected. What a wonderful line. Yeah, no one pays attention to that, right? You get a fabulous pivot, fabulous. But if your hands are crap, you're going to be a hacker. And so this is circa probably 92. And I've been on the Hogan tour. I've been around, and I go out to work with a hat, and he has me try to hit left and right-handed chips and pitches. I look at him indignant. Hat. It's Schaeffer. That's for your hacker beginners. I'm not gonna try it. And I'm just hosel rockets. I couldn't find the ball. And ever since then, though, I've really upgraded my hands. And that was a big lesson as a player that was fairly successful. That's how bad my hands were. And that's why I did after working on penmanship and hammer drills. And these are the magical instruments that really pulled it all together for all great players. But that was a fabulous lesson, and I still use it.
So when they're working together, you think they know something. When you pull them apart, you go, golly, what happened?
Yeah.
Except for putting. I'll go with my moment of Greggness. I'm not sure it was one moment, but one year I lived up north. I was playing pretty good golf, 94, 95. And I would stop on the way up and stop and see Gregg and have a lesson. And I'm playing a lot of golf with some good players. And that was, I kind of knew, and it was something about loading, which Gregg was always big on, still is, I know, on pivot, as you said, but also like a true load and not a false load. That was a big thing for me. I probably did that my whole life, was false load. And I finally, just from working steadily with Gregg and getting that right, and pretty soon I felt as though I couldn't miss the shot. And then, I got in this playoff, and I got to play in a PGA Tour event, and I stuck to that feeling, at least getting to there. Probably once I got in the first tee of the PGA Tour event, I probably went back to my old. I wanted to control it, of course, because it's no fun doing it. No fun doing it the easy way. That was 95 AT&T.
AT&T.
Yeah.
Brett Massingham on the bag for him. How's that twosome?
And I saw Ben. I went up. It was a year, it was a lot of rain, and that was the year Peter Jacobsen won. And I went up and saw Ben on like the day before. I'm like, I actually didn't take a lesson, but I told him, and I was telling him on the range at the polo fields, I go, listen, Ben, there's only one thing. I notice all these guys have these perfect divot patches. It's like you could see the roots. It's all yellow, perfect. And mine looks like a landmine went off. He goes, I watched everyone. And he goes, they should have been watching you. You're the one doing it right. They're the ones doing it wrong.
Oh, how lovely is that?
That's my Gregg Mchatton divots going.
He hit balls just at Nicholas that week and everyone else. That's great.
Oh yeah, I threw a divot right on his yellow cashmere sweater.
Oh, nice.
Well, guys, this has been fun. What a great 40. We need to do this more often. This is fantastic.
Hat, I want to finish with 2 quick questions on my end. Grundy, great job. Hat, if you were a golf professional, what would you be doing for a living?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's an interesting story. When I got out of college, Pete Fleur, they're the Fleur Company, which is a pretty big company.
Engineers.
He was a kind of a pal, and he says, just come down and you get a job and we'll get you going and you'll be in the corporate world. So I went down there and I thought I had a job, but I had to go through the interview process. But I didn't quite understand it because I thought I had a job already. So I didn't have exactly the right attitude. And they said, well, this guy has a bad attitude. So I didn't get that job, which is the best thing that ever happened to me. 'Cause I might still be there today, for heaven's sakes.
Oh my goodness.
And Hat, and
I would have probably taught, Bobby.
I got one more question. So, you know, we all have such respect for your game. We all, gosh dang it, Herman Leach-Vino's caddy told you, if you're not using that golf swing, I should like to borrow it for a while.
Yeah,
I
Greg,
think
can I
you make
use
some
that
money.
swing? Yeah. Isn't
But
that great?
my point is, what was that moment, shall we say, that you said, you know what, I'm no longer going to pursue my dream of being a competitive golfer. I'm going to go into full-time teaching, and you fully hung it up. You remember that moment, or was there a transitional time? Was that heartbreaking, or was that easy? Because it was.
Oh, it was
that's
easy.
tough, I would guess.
I wasn't as passionate about playing. I think if I'd have had my druthers, I'd like to have won the Open and then go teach.
That makes sense, knowing you.
Yeah.
I always, when I won Teacher of the Year, I said, "This is better than winning the Open." He said,
I remember that.
I can only make one birdie, and I can produce many more. This is my dream.
Well, we're all lucky for that. That's for darn sure. Amen on that one. That's cool. Thanks.
And I want to say thanks, Grundy. You're doing an awesome job with these. I've watched all of your interviews now, and they're really entertaining, insightful. You're doing a hell of a job. And
Well,
Greg, you know, can't thank you enough for all you've done for me in my career. And Bobby, you know, you've influenced me a ton too. And it's, you know, like, I'm glad we should do this more often. And
yeah.
You know,
This is your 48.
I'm throwing videos at Greg and Bobby, you know, looking for free tips here and there. But
Well, my biggest influences in the game, we all know, Gregg Mchatton, Johnny Grunn, Billy Mckinney, and Ben Doyle. And Ben's no longer here, but living right here, this is my inner circle for my game for all these years. It continues to be so. That's pretty powerful.
Likewise.
I'm very grateful.
Well, thank you for all you guys.
Yeah.
I get more from you than you possibly could get from me.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
I'll buy into it for a couple seconds.
Let's consider that 50-year bill or 40-year bill wiped away now after this interview.
Sure.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and God, there's so many stories left on the table here. We could probably go on forever.
Part two coming up.
Part two coming up. Yeah, Greg, we'll talk about the time Greg and I were part of a robbery. Remember that, Greg, at Santa Anita?
What did we do? I don't know.
We got robbed. You were working the counter, and we got robbed.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, you don't remember that? They were pretty smooth. I guess they were really smooth.
They were really smooth.
But anyway, there's so many experiences. This has been great, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll do part two soon. All right.
All right, Billy and Bobby, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Ron, thank you for putting this together.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Let's do it again soon. Thank you,
You're
guys.
the best, Hat. Grundy, thank you. Billy Ray. Great.
Love you guys.
Guys.